Hi guys, Nesty here. Welcome back to another video. We are right after the new patch hit. Some stuff is added. I don't think there are really big changes so far, but we have some new stuff which we should talk about. I would say I'm starting with the new skill books. We have the skill books for Indra and Yaksha. Since I don't have every Indra, I collected the informations of the books. The Dark Indra, for whoever has him, has 20% and 20% increased damage. Yeah, it sucks. It's really sad. I think with 30% would obviously be better, and yeah, other Courage Striker are getting 30% as well. Some get 20%. I don't get the reason why developers are doing that. Like, either give them all 20% or 30%, but don't give a Wood Merlin that already is as strong as a Pinot 30%, and others that are not that strong 20%. I don't get the reason behind it, but it is as it is. 20% on both skills for Dark, so I don't think the books are worth it. The light one is getting 30% and 30%. Not worth it in my opinion as well. Both are usable, but as we all know, these books are so expensive, so we really have to think about which ones we want to have. And I personally don't see the Dark and the Light one good enough to get these expensive books. The Fire one is getting 30% increased damage, and on the active 15% increased damage, 10% activation rate, and another turn, which in my opinion for PvP is really strong. Let's take a look at him. So his attack stat is already really high. He has the elemental edge, and he's getting 30% increased damage, or let's say a 30% higher damage multiplier, which really is good, especially with the elemental edge. And seal in general obviously is not bad in the current meta. And the seal is getting, or at least the active is getting 15% more damage, 10% activation rate, so it's 80%, and another turn, so it's 80% for 3 turns, so obviously this is really good. I think the book upgrades for the fire one are very decent. The water one is really underwhelming in my opinion. He's getting 15% damage and 10% rate. I don't know why they are not giving him the 20% so that he's on 100% for the attack down. I don't think it's worth it going for the books for water. I mean, if you have 80% or 90%, it's not a big difference. So water is not worth it in my opinion as well. And the wood one. And I think the wood one is really interesting now, at least for the people that are thinking about going for books. Like, look at this stats. 32k HP, 2.8k attack and 2.9k defense. So stat wise he's really high. Skill wise, I think it's not the best skill set, but it's not a weak skill set in general, because the stun, I don't like monsters that have stun but they don't grant any damage. But the Wood Indra has 2.8k attack, so it's not that if you are getting resisted, the Indra is completely useless. And now with the skill books, he's getting 15% damage and 1 turn for the active, for the passive, which means he has a 100% chance for a 2-turn stun. And for the active, he's getting another turn, which means 80% chance, 30% thirst for 3 turns. I think he's really strong in arena now. He has damage, he has, let's say he has the body, he has the effective HP to survive lots of attacks, and 2 useful skills with 100% 2-turn stun and 80% 3-turn thirst for 30%. The 30% is really important because some monsters have like 20% and there are attackers or defenders that can heal against it or can restore the SB against it. Like, let's say there are some monsters that have 20%, but for example you're fighting a light purse. Light purse can heal that 20% so that the active is full again, which makes the skill in general much weaker. But it's not like that with the Wood Indra. He has the 30% and you can't heal the 30% with just one monster. And how many people have 2 SB generators? Like, very few people. So the skill set is really strong. And he has a very big body. Like, he has a lot of effective HP, has a high attack stat, and very few recovery stats. Like, it's really low, 1.8k compared to the other stats. So I think he's very decent with books now. So he might be something you want to go for if you don't want to see the meta monsters over and over again. Especially in the current meta with the HP aggression monsters, he excels in my opinion, because it's not like the meta before with the passive healers, where like every monster had max resistance. Those HP aggression monsters can't do that because they need crit rate, so the chance to land your stun for 2 turns is much higher. The second monster that is getting books is the Yaksha. I think some of them are very decent as well. The fire one has 80% attack down for 2 turns and the blind 50% for 3 turns and a useful leader skill. He's getting 10% activation rate and 30% activation rate. Means 90% for 2 turns and 80% for 3 turns, which makes the Fire Yaksha viable again, in my opinion, if he is booked. I'm not too sure. I think he's still a bit weaker than those other monsters, because normally you're not looking for the blind on your debuffer, especially not on the active, in my opinion. I mean, it's nice to have, but are we really looking for a blind? Normally not. It's like, I'm happy if I have a monster that has the blind. For example, the Word. She has the blind and obviously the Courageous Strike. In combination, that's totally fine. But if I can choose, do I want to have attack down and defense down, or do I want to have attack down and blind? I would always go for the defense down, even if I'm not playing with blind. Totally fine. So I have mixed feelings about the Yaksha, but he's still good. It's not that he's bad. Like 30%, that means he has an 80% chance for 3 turns to blind and a 90% chance for 2 turns to hit the attack down. Plus he has a good leader skill and he has a lot of effective HP, 30k HP and over 3k defense. Obviously he's surviving forever. So I think the books at least are very good on him. Then we have the light one. 10% activation rate, some damage, and 30% damage. I think 30% is decent, it's acceptable. 15% and the activation rate 10%. That means 80% for 3 turn defense down. Yeah, of course it would be nice if it's more, but it's okay in my opinion, because it's a 3 turn defense down. and he's getting more damage on the active. Plus, obviously, he has the good leader skill, so he can be used here and there. So I think the light one is decent as well. Let's see. The dark one. In general, I don't like the skill set. 10% HP, flat 10% HP, which might be better for your aggression teams. And a mere silence. The silence obviously is killing the whole monster. With the skill books, he's getting 5% higher heal and 20% activation rate, which means he will have 15% flat HP heal and a 100% chance for 2 turns to silence. Maybe if we have the books we can think about him. 15% is not bad and 100% chance to silence. I mean, the silence is still not a strong skill, but at least we have a 100% chance. I would probably go for a different Yaksha, but he's still not that bad. The water one has the double stalker, 30% increased crit rate. With the skill books, he's getting 15% and 10% and 20% activation rate or skill effectiveness. That means he has a 50% stalker. With his natural crit rate, he is at 60% crit rate, which means it's very easy to give him like attack crit rate, or let's say attack HP or attack crit rate HP, whatever. So I think the books are really decent on the water one. So overall, I would say the best one is either the water one or the fire one. Then comes the light one, the dark one, and the wood one only has increased damage. Obviously, what else can he get? But at least 30%. But I think his job is not to deal damage. I mean, I think his job is to debuff. So he wants to have more HP and all that stuff. So I think he's the worst of them. Maybe equal to the dark one. So I would say water, fire and light are good, and dark and wood are still not bad, but not as good as the other 3. So that's it for the skill books. Then we are going for the review of the Alpacas and the Gatitos. They're coming back as well. So let's start with the Alpacas. Where is the fire one? There we have the fire alpaca. Skill set, buff breaker and seal. Buff breaker, of course, 100% like all other buff breakers. And the seal, 80% 3 turn is really good. Leader skill is not the best for that skill set. Stats are not that great. It's okay, but not great. Yeah. In my opinion, a useless monster. Buff breaker is not needed anywhere. And the active is a single target active. So this seal will only hit one monster. So in my opinion, fire is useless. Then we have the water one. Very offensive stats. Not that much HP, but it's okay. High attack stat and very low defense. But look at his skill set. I think it's not a bad skill set. On crit, a 100% increased SP means after 1 turn he's full. And then he's starting to be annoying with the active. I think the active don't really fit the whole concept of that monster. In general, if you're attacking, you want to be full in 1 turn. And then you want to deal as much damage as possible, you want to stun, you want to shock, you want to do whatever. But with the SP Siphon, you only be able to use half of his effectiveness. let's say you are stealing 30% SP of your opponent. How often will that result in 100%? Probably not that often. You need a lot of other orb generators to be back at 100%. So in my opinion, those two skill sets or those two skills don't fit each other. The Morale boost already gives you 100%. That means if you're using your passive, you are always full. Let's have the scenario. First turn in arena. You are attacking with the Morale boost. You are full on the first turn. Second turn. You want to attack, I don't know, let's say there's one monster of them that is really fast. Like Water Arthur, for example. He's full in one turn, because he was lucky. Then you want to steal his SP. Okay, Arthur is not able to use his active, which is good. But you don't profit from the stolen SP. You only steal it from him, but that's it. It's not that you will be able to make use of the 30% that you got yourself. Because normally it's very, very hard to get 70% SP from orbs alone, especially if you're using a monster like the Alpaca. And next turn, after that, you're using the Morale boost again, you are full. So maybe in CVC it's good enough, but for some pocket strategies or so in arena I don't think it's good enough. Sadly. Then we have the wood one. There we have the wood one, and I think this one is by far, like really by far the best of them. If you have problems getting good wood attackers for Titans, let's say you have no Pinolos, you have no Wood Merlin, you have one Jana and one Wood Thor, for example. That's not enough to deal decent damage against the Water Titan. I think this Wood Alpaca is your solution to deal damage there. Stats are not that great. The HP is okay, the attack is okay, the defense is really low. But I think that's still enough. The skill set is a Water Hunter, which means 50% increased critical damage, or the real increase is 75%. It's not that this 50% is just added to your crit damage. It's more that the calculation for the hunter is after all that damage. So just remember that it's equal to 75% crit damage. So the hunter already gives you increased damage. And then we have a single target Unflinching Strike. The first one that has this skill. There is only one other monster that has a similar skill, and that's the Courageous Strike of the Pinolo. And we all know how hard this Pinolo can hit. I mean, minus on attack, HP, defense, and he's still hitting far over 1 million damage per active against a Water Titan, at least at the beginning. So this might be a bit less damage, but for sure still a lot of damage. And there is another advantage in my opinion. He has the crit. So you directly have, I mean, both skills are crit based, so you might get problems there, especially if you want to use the Alpaca in the front lane, where you're constantly getting attack downed. So in the front you need crit rate and resistance. To make that a bit easier, in my opinion, you can use the Alpaca as leader skill, so you're getting 20% crit rate, and just with one crit rate gem, for example, you would be able to go for resistance. That might be a solution for the front lane if you're lacking gem quality, because you want to get crit rate and resistance very high. You need very, very strong gems. Like, which one has a lot of... Oh, this one for example. As you can see, 99% crit rate and max resistance. For that I needed a crit rate gem that has 22% resistance, an attack gem that has 24% resistance and nearly 15% crit rate, and an HP gem with crit rate, plus the set results in these stats. But that means you already wasted one gem for crit rate. So it's really hard to gem them with crit rate and resistance to use them in the front. So maybe these 20% of the leader skill of the Alpaca will help you. But overall, I think this is by far the one that you should look for. Obviously, I will test him. But I think this is the key for newer people or mid-game player to finally deal decent damage against the Water Titan. I think this Unflinching Strike here will hit really hard. Of course, sadly, the stats are not that high, so I think, I'm not totally sure, but I think those normal Courageous Strikers like the Thor and those, the Wood Garuda, are still hitting harder than the Alpaca. But I'm not too sure. It really depends on luck. I think the actives are equally strong. I mean, yeah, equally strong probably. So, just so you know, this one really hits hard. Most likely. The Light Alpaca. There. Stat-wise, obviously a bit better because it's a natural 4-star monster. 32k HP is good. The attack is okay and nearly 2.7k defense is decent as well. So stat-wise, the Alpaca is really good. But I'm not a fan of the skill set. 50% for the shock 2 turns. I think it's not enough, it could be higher. Maybe it's getting books and it will raise the proc rate. And another problem is this skill here, in my opinion. It's a single target, so 50% chance for 2 turns on a single target skill is like nothing. Why can't it be like 100%? It's still a single target attack. There are others that have a higher chance as an AoE. Like, that skill is really underwhelming. And I don't like the light one. Maybe we have to wait for the books, if the books are worth it. And then we have the dark one. HP is really low, but attack and defense are really high. I mean, for an attacker, 2.7k defense is really high. Sadly, the HP is so low. Skill set, 70% 1-turn stun, useless, and an elemental edge, single target. In my opinion, not strong enough. As a dark monster, you can be sure that you will encounter some light monsters, where it would be much better if it wouldn't be the elemental edge, but like a hunter, like many other dark monsters have, like the Dark Cat, the Dark Sura, and whatever. But I think at least the dark one is usable, like the light one as well. Both are usable, but I think the one that you should look the most is the wood one, at least if you want to go for Titans. This might be your key unit to finally be able to deal decent damage against the water one. Okay, that's it for the Alpaca. If I would rate them, I would say wood is by far the best. Then LD comes and then fire and water. And like I said, we are getting the Gatitos. I think at the 8th we will get the Lupin dungeon again, and the soul stones will be for Gatito. So let's take a closer look at the Gatitos. There we have the fire one. I don't really have to go into the stats if we can see the skill set. Rack down, petrification on a single target, useless. The water one. Where is the Gatito? There. Stat-wise, really underwhelming as well. Not really a high HP pool, very low attack, and not that much defense for a defender. Skill-wise, he's a bit better, has the attack down for 100% and 2 turns. And yeah, single target with Zap. In my opinion, useless as well. There are other monsters that are far better. Even as an attacker, he's not useful, like because of the single target. He's not useful because, yeah, he only has 1.7k attack, so he's out of that as well. Then we have the wood one. No, I have a wood one somewhere. There. Of course, sadly, stat-wise, he's really underwhelming as well. But at least he has the same active like the Shelly. 100% defense down for 2 turns. Sadly, the fatigue on the active. I mean, it's of course a single target attack on an attacker. But I think overall his stats are not good enough. So I would not go for any of those. The light one. Let's see, where's the light Gatito? There. Stat-wise a bit better. As a tank, not that much HP. There are others that are much better. On the passive he has the Zap, and on the active the single target HP aggression skill. In my opinion, completely underwhelming. I would not go for the light one as well. And the dark one. Where do we have the dark one? There. So, the dark one at least has a lot of attack. HP is not that high, but at least it's a decent defense. So let's say overall his defensive stats like effective HP is not that high, but at least he has a high attack stat, which is really important for the dark one. Skill set, he has a moral boost, which means he's full really fast. And then he has a single target hunter active, which deals tons of damage. So by far, like far the best is the dark one. Then comes the wood one, and all others are trash. Like there are much better monsters, like an attack downer. You don't want to have an attack downer that is defensive as well, with only one skill that is an attack down. There are betters. The fire one completely useless. The wood one with the defense down is still usable, but in the end I would use a wood Fibian, for example, that is much better in my opinion. The light one has a really bad skill set as well. So the only one that I would go for is the dark one. Okay, so let's put everything together. I think from the Alpacas, by far the best is the wood one. You can obviously gem him like every other monster, like crit rate, HP, attack. You can go for more of a glass cannon build when you have, let's say, a light Venus, for example. You can go crit rate, attack, attack. Obviously the Alpaca will die faster, but in the first turns you will be able to deal more damage if the Venus is able to get the shield up. Then Yeah, the other ones are not that great, and they have all the basic builds in my opinion. Like the debuffer has HP defense, the attacker, I don't know if there is an attacker except the wood one. The attacker, attack crit rate, or attack HP crit rate, at least for the dark one. For the RGBs you can go attack HP as well. It's like really basics. Every of them have the same. So yeah, that's it. I like the skill books. Sadly, I have no crystals to go for any of them. I mean, I probably wouldn't go for any of them anyway, because the crystals are too expensive to make just one monster a bit better. In my opinion, it needs to have a very big impact. Like, as an example, I was going for the Merlin books in case I will get the wood one. He has the 30% increased damage, which means it will directly increase my damage against the Water Titan. If you would assume that he's able to deal 10 million damage, I mean, it's not too uncommon to see a Pinolo, for example, deal 10 million damage, and the Pinolo is equal to the Merlin. So let's say the Merlin is dealing 10 million. He's getting 30% more damage, so it directly increases his damage by a lot, and you will feel the damage. Yeah, and since I only have Titans left, I have to somehow increase my damage there. Yeah, but overall that's it for the review of the Gatito and the Alpaca and the skill books of Indra and Yaksha. So I hope this will help you guys, and see you soon. Ciao.